of business, because this is a Business Express, and joining me to have this discussion this morning is Rotus. Rotus, very good morning to you. Great to have you on.
Hey, good morning, Ayo. Good morning to. I thought I just saw you. I thought you were on the drive just yesterday.
You know me. I feel like a butterfly and sting like a bee, so I'm floating.
Nice.
Yeah,
very nice. Good to see you again. Yeah. Good morning to you. Good morning to all our listeners, clients, everybody out there.
Right, and to all our listeners, you can send your messages via WhatsApp on 0809 440 981 to be part of the conversation this morning. All right, Rotus, yes, we're going to have a conversation about cassava. But before we do that, let's talk about crude oil, because what exactly is happening?
Yeah, we saw crude oil surge yesterday by about 2 or 3%. I think the prices as of this morning, Brent crude is at $97 a barrel. That is massive. So
that's almost touching 100, man.
Yeah, we're going to be touching 100 soon. And so I think the United States, I think it's the Energy Information Agency or so, or is it Energy Information Administration? One of them, EIA, released crude stockpiles. There's this data they release on a regular basis, like weekly data on oil inventory in the United States. I think the data is also released for OECD countries as well, where they show how many or what their inventory is, which is, how much oil they hold. That is different from strategic petroleum reserves. Strategic petroleum reserves are for emergency purposes. So basically, they just release these kinds of data. And if it's falling, if your oil inventory is falling, that means it's one of two things. Either supply lines are tight, the market is getting tight, and you're having to dip into your inventory to put out, to use for, and I think the inventory is unrefined. So you probably have to refine it and then put it out into the market, in your domestic market. So if crude oil inventories are falling, that means that demand is probably rising, or, you got your issues with supply falling. So it's one of the two. And we're talking about the general market for oil. So we know what's been going on. OPEC has decided to voluntarily cut its supply and stretch that cut to the end of the year in order to support prices. Saudi Arabia is leading that charge. Russia is a non-OPEC member, but Russia also says they're going to be limiting export. In fact, they said they will limit diesel as well. So, are they trying to squeeze the US and other Western nations, because of the sanctions on Russia for the war? Is, Saudi Arabia trying to buffer up its own, FX reserves, and, because it has big plans that it has for its economy, non-oil sector, lots of spending power. Getting some Saudi Arabia data later today. So there's a lot going on, but by and large, and we're going into the winter period, right? So that's in the winter period in the West, where it's going to be colder. People will want to heat up their homes, and so there'll probably be more demand for heating, which is more demand for energy, which will probably push prices up. So, that's what we're seeing. So, of course, the next conversation now is, what does it mean for us here?
Exactly where I was going.
Right. So, I mean, we always talk about this. It's a double-edged sword. Nigeria is unfortunately not taking advantage of higher oil prices because of her production issues, where aging infrastructure, damaged pipelines, vandalism, outright oil thefts. Those are the things. So unfortunately, look, there was a report that Dubai, I saw it somewhere, I have to look for it. They paid down their debts. I don't think they've eliminated it. They've made significant headway in paying down their debts thanks to oil rising. I think Angola was able to do the same thing. I think the Kwacha has actually, so, so that, and then also you're going to see, watch diesel. I mean, diesel is above 1,000 Naira now, right? So diesel is unregulated. And when crude oil is rising, you see the corresponding rise in diesel. So diesel is a good metric to track and tell yourself, okay, what should we probably be paying for petrol right now with where oil prices are going? So just continue to watch diesel prices. I mean, diesel was, was last year, or we're in 2023, when the war started, oil prices spiked, diesel spiked. There was this whole hoopla around the aviation sector. Then it fell to about 550 earlier this year or so, 550. And then now oil prices, as they've climbed again, it has spiked one more time. So you'll see, so it just tells you where PMS should probably be as you see oil prices climbing.
Okay, Rotus, before we leave, really quickly, now that, as you said, the oil prices climbing are a double-edged sword for Nigeria. I mean, shouldn't, and it's because of our issues with production, shouldn't that be the sign to actually sort of declare a state of emergency in that sector? Because we know the issue there, and we know that if those problems are solved, we can take advantage of this way Angola and other countries are doing.
I agree. And you have to ask yourself why a state of emergency has not been declared there, because that is our commonwealth and it is what we depend on the most. How did Qatar fund the World Cup? Small Qatar that you can fit inside maybe Surulere or something, or maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe you can fit Qatar inside the mainland or something. But how did a small country like that spend over $200 billion building stadiums and hosting the World Cup? It was oil money. Why is Russia able to avoid, well, not that they're avoiding, but why are sanctions not hurting Russia? Because oil and gas is one of Russia's major exports, and they're making money from that and funding their war. How is Saudi Arabia so rich? Cristiano Ronaldo is playing in Saudi Arabia. They are buying football clubs. They are taking over golf. They are taking over. It's all oil money. Why is Dubai where it is today? The UAE is an oil exporter. It was all oil money. All these countries, I mean, China is an outlier. China is based on manufacturing. China is not an oil country. It's a manufacturing hub. So, Nigeria needs to just step up, declare the state of emergency. You keep seizing boats that you claim are used to smuggle oil. They will burn the boats down. They won't tell you who the owner of the boat is or who was prosecuted. So we're not serious. We're not being serious. Yeah.
All right, away from oil matters, and let's talk about cassava. And just to give a backstory, there was a video recently that was making the rounds about a young man who was trying to get the attention of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, talking about commodifying the Naira using cassava. Of course, many people didn't understand what exactly he was talking about. Some people joked about it, but I think we need to have that conversation, and we need to start from the point of what exactly does commodification of the Naira mean?
So the Naira is commodified as it is because of our dependence on oil. Oil is a commodity. If you look at our GDP travails when we last fell into a recession, it was because the last two times we fell into recession in 2016 and 2020 was when oil prices crashed, right? 2016 oil prices fell. In 2020, the COVID pandemic the lockdowns constricted demand, and so oil crashed. So those are the last two times Nigeria fell into recession. So Nigeria's dollar revenues are closely tied to how oil moves. So essentially, the Naira is already commodified because of the relationship with oil. But what that gentleman was saying is that he wants President Tinubu to focus on cassava and link the value of the Naira. The way we depend on oil, he wants us to depend on cassava. The reason why is because Nigeria is the largest producer of cassava in the world. And well, he just thinks that there's a lot of derivatives you can get from it. In terms of energy transition, there's so many derivatives: starch, cassava flour, ethanol. So and PwC had a report in 2018 saying that Nigeria could export to the tune of about, was it 400? Was it 2? It's almost 2. There's $2 or $3 billion in a year. Now, the government could get a lot of taxes from it. But unfortunately, Ayo, with everything else, there's always potential for Nigeria to do something. And then there's the reality of why we have not been able to realize that potential.
Okay, but I mean, we know why we haven't been able to, but is it possible? Is it feasible? Is there a slight chance that it could happen?
So it can, but think about cassava. What's the first thing you think about when you think about cassava? For me, it's not Gary. For me, it's Gary right. Really? So, right. And I hear it is very highly perishable. I talked to the president of the Premium Bread Makers Association because Russia Ukraine was causing and it was impacting wheat supplies. Egypt needs wheat because I went to Egypt. They eat bread like crazy. They rival us in bread consumption, right? We also are big consumers of bread. We import wheat. We're dependent on wheat imports. So I was like, okay, well, why don't you just use cassava flour and substitute that for wheat? He said, well, it's after a certain percentage of it, it's rancid, it causes bread to break up. So there's no demand on that side for using cassava flour for bread. Another issue is that we are just, farming outputs, our productivity in farming is low. Most of our farmers are subsistence farmers. We're not using mechanical farming mechanized farming because it's expensive. So unfortunately, all these derivatives that you could possibly get from cassava, they have not been realized because of the existing challenges that Nigeria faces in the agricultural sector. Outputs, logistics, lack of power to be able to, there's so much waste when it comes to cassava outputs. What else now? Herdsmen clashes, the insecurity. So every other look, I was looking at our foreign trade in goods statistics for the first and second quarter of the year. In total, right, we exported 279 billion naira worth of agri products in the first quarter of this year. It was 280 billion in the second quarter. If you annualize and say Nigeria does 280 billion every quarter, it comes out to about 1.1 trillion naira. Divide that by 1,000 naira per dollar, that's just $1 billion in a whole year of for all your agri exports. So cassava didn't even make the top 20, right? So despite the fact that we're the largest producer. So there are a myriad of challenges there that the crop is facing. And frankly, Ayo, let me throw this in there because I know we're running out of time. I don't know if we have any messages, but you should not say you want to tie your naira to one agricultural commodity. You want to diversify. So you look at it, a country like Russia. Despite I despise President Putin. I think he's a murderer. I think he's a dictator. But the Russian economy is incredible. They've got oil and gas. They've got wheat. They've got, they export gas to Europe. They get money from there. They export oil to India and China. They get money from there. They gave us their Jalkuta steel plant, which is still abandoned now. They've been to the moon. They have one of the best scientists in the world. They've got an impressive football league when it comes to sports. It is a diversified economy. I can pick Brazil. Brazil builds aeroplane parts. They've got Embraer. They've got sugar. They are the biggest producer of sugar. They've got, ethanol. So they've got oil. Brazil has oil. Brazil has the best football. Yeah. So all these things, you've got to diversify and not just say, oh, cassava, oil. Spread it out. You got to spread it out,
All right. Okay, let's do a couple of messages as we round up this morning. Benga Komu says, Rotus, was Nigeria not recently tagged 6th on the index of countries where criminality thrives? And unfortunately, our politicians are unable to muster the political will to stamp out criminality, which impacts on our revenues. All right. Zikolo says, smooth morning. So Rotus, you expect emergency to be declared in the oil sector, so we as a country can begin to take advantage of the rise in oil cost? No, they won't. The few that matter are already making money from our Commonwealth, and it appears the president wants to continue the same way his predecessors did. Who is our Minister of Petroleum? We just need to begin to look into really diversifying the economy. All right, thank you for that. Who's talking to us here? Olumide says, help me tell Rotus that I love him. But he says he's a man though. So yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all the love. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Yenka Bolu says, if there's so much waste as to cassava usage, then we should have invested in research so we can totally rule out that option. For instance, Zobo leaves are something that some folk are cashing out on. I got a friend playing in that field, and guess what? In the beginning, there was the talk of Zobo not having a long staying power. I beg, forget that. Forget that nonsense list. I beg.
Yinka, I always love Yinka's messages. He's always straight to the point. He's always very blunt.
All right. Thank you all for your messages. And thank you, Rotus, for joining me this morning right here on Business Express.
Ayo, you're the hardest working man in radio. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you very much. I'll catch you guys. All right.
Yeah, I'll do this again tomorrow. Have a great morning.
Yeah.
All right, and we've come to the end of Business Express right here on Smooth 98.1. Stick around because Smooth Breakfast is going to continue more great music for you right now. And then at 7:30, we'll get into Freshly Pressed. Don't go anywhere.